Yo, what's up, YouTube? This is Stokely speaking. So today I'm gonna talk something about Donald Trump meet with Xi Jinping. Okay, like in Busan, Korea, right? For the kind of trade summit, that kind of meeting is happening in South Korea. And I'm gonna also analyze briefly about what does it mean to the overseas Chinese, especially Chinese staying in America, like what I'm doing right now, right? As asylum seeker, but also including the American-born Chinese and Asian community in general, right? So basically, the overall picture of that, right, is like Donald Trump, after seeing the Prime Minister of Japan, Sanae Takaichi, and the Korean Prime Minister, finally Donald Trump met with Xi Jinping, the head of China, the head of CCP, whatever you call him, you know, he's a powerful guy. So two most powerful guys finally meet. And we're going to talk briefly about what kind of agreement, presumably they have reached, because they finally haven't signed any contract. They haven't really signed any, final agreement yet, but, based on a CNN report or Fox News or whatever, the information that gleaned from the internet, for some trifle information from X.com as well, because, I compile different news sources and I provide my own analysis, right? As a Chinese asylum seeker right now who lives in the U.S. seeking for asylum, I do provide some special perspective because I believe in China for about 37 years, right? I know how Chinese people think. I know how CCP people think. Okay, so basically, what are the agreement we have? Okay, so let me find it. What are the possible, what are the main agreement or improvement they have for this, right? So basically, that's good for China. First of all, Donald Trump had cut down the Chinese import tax from 57% to 47%. Because that previously Donald Trump is threatening to have 100% increase of the Chinese import tax from the goods imported from China to America, and now that has been brought down to 47%, which is pretty close to the previous level before the trade war. Oh heck, I kind of forgot what exactly were the numbers, but I don't give a damn. I don't care that much, right? I feel like previously it was something about like 25% to 30%. So 47% is pretty decent, though. It's pretty, important for China for, cramping that, stopping that from possibly rising a little bit even higher, right? Like 47% is not as good as 25%, though, but it's a lot better than 147%. Even though, you guys been talking about, for the import tax, anything more than 100%, that's meaningless. Yeah, I agree with that. But, a decrease is a decrease. That's good for China, though. That's good for CCP China, though. And for the tax about the fentanyl, because the Chinese does a lot of export to the fentanyl, for the fentanyl precursor to America, right? Along with Mexico, Donald Trump is saying, oh, you guys are making a lot of drugs anti-Americans, right? Yeah, we do see a lot of victims here in America, so I do apologize for that. But guys, I'm not one of them. I'm always against the CCP Chinese. You guys got to make sure that you have to differentiate a real Chinese who love China, but despite CCP Chinese and the CCP lovers, we're different. We're not that evil. But anyway, so there's no... I'm just based on what Donald Trump has been saying, right? I don't know whether there's any formal investigation about the fentanyl stuff, this and that, but we do have a lot of drug addicts in the streets, right? In Detroit, right? In Seattle, in Washington, in Los Angeles, you can see, some people, they walk like zombies. That's pretty bad. Some people in New York do that as well. That's pretty bad. I feel sorry for that. So basically, we're gonna bring down the number of the fentanyl precursor imports, right? Of course, this actually smuggling. It's not a real legal import because that shit is illegal, right? So anyway, so now Donald Trump bring down the fentanyl precursor import tax from China from 20% to 10%. This is pretty good. This is pretty good for the American, for the Chinese though, because if they're doing that legally, that's great. That's good for the business because some pharmaceutical companies or some legal, pharmaceutical company for legal medical reason, they do need the fentanyl precursor, as long as not from the black market. Because think about this, right? If you're trying to curtailing the import, from the illegal market or from the black market, and then the result would be like they have more import from the black market, because you know what? That's pretty profitable. We have a lot of drug lords like that. We know one of a Chinese guy, he got captured in Mexico, something like in the southern American country, something like that. That guy, from the surface, you think he's a bull reader, right? He's a geek, but actually he's a gangster. He's a drug lord, something like that, like Al Capone, or something like that. I kind of forgot what Gucci Mane had said about one name, Pablo Escobar, right? Pablo, like that. The song along with E40, because I'm into hip hop. If you check my profile here in YouTube, you can see that I also make some rap song. I did a rap song about a dark coin, right? Dark coin, you can check my song there. Okay. Anyway, probably in the future I will resume to make some music again. I don't know, because I love music. China has promised to restore the purchase from American, restore the purchase of American soil. That's good, because China's got to buy the soy. I'm sorry, not soil, soy. I do apologize. English is not my first language, though, even though many people give me compliments to say, oh, you have very good English. Yeah, I've been an English teacher in China for about 20 years, but the reason why I want to do the English channel content is because I want to improve my English further. Guys, just bear with me, okay? Anyway, so the American soy, now there's a better way out to CCP China, which China always buy from, right? They're going to buy the soy anyway. They were buying from Brazil, they were buying from Argentina, they were buying from Russia, but now America. That's the proper way to buy the soy from. And then we have the rare earth control that has been halted by the Chinese side. That's just good news, because America, we do need the Chinese rare earths. Well, yesterday, I'm talking about Trump formed with alliance with Takaichi, right? The Japan prime minister, to secure the possible rare earth supply chain to counterbalance Chinese rare earth dominance, right? But that's just one of the possibility here. I mean, in the short term, in the foreseeable, for example, next 5 years or next decade even, I'm not seeing anything that is replaceable to the Chinese rare earth supply. Not yet. So this is very good. And then China's got to work with America to tackle against the fentanyl smugglers. This is good for people, in America, especially for the poor people who are underprivileged, for the people who have sourness, they need some drugs to relieve their stress, this and that. I feel like, it's not always about a lacking of self-control, because, of course, I despite those drug users, but you got to respect everybody. They have their human rights, they have their own choice, but maybe they will make the wrong choice. But don't get me wrong, right? So if we kind of cut off the supply of the illegal fentanyl stuff in the market, right? Remember, just imagine how many people might benefit from that. Again, you love what you love. But if you're into drugs, that's got not destroy, it's not gonna just destroy yourself, but also destroy your whole family, just bear in mind. But America is a free country, but I'm totally against the drug using, I'm totally against that. So wish you guys good luck, never fall into the trap of drugs, right? You can have a multiple method, you have multiple channel to de-stress, right? For example, workout, mixed martial art, boxing, you name it, right? Even watching porn. I mean, I'm not PC correct here, right? But even watching porn is slightly better than using drugs. Not slightly, 100 times better, right? But I'm not encouraging that, right? So anyway, but now, just guys be aware that this kind of agreement is just like a presumptive agreement. It's a temporary relief. It's kind of a halt of the war, right? It's a truce, but it's not an armistice, right? So we're not reaching to the final signing contract of these, assumptive, terms in the contract, right? So I'm looking forward that Donald Trump finally officially sign a contract with Xi Jinping or whoever represent him, right? I think this is the right way to go, okay? And so now I think that, many people is talking about, wow, China is really on the rise, right? Now they're on even terms with each other because America used to not accept Busan as a meeting location because America actually designated another location in South Korea, of course. But Chinese delegates said, no, we would only accept Busan for the meeting location. So think about that. Many people saying, oh, CNN is being saying that China is finally on even terms with America in terms of international dominance and power. So we do not just have a hegemony in the world like America. We have the second player, maybe equally important, that is CCP China or China, whatever you call it. CCP, I call CCP China because I hate CCP. I don't hate China. I love China, but I hate CCP. But whatever you call it, you can call it in a mutual way to say like it's China. Do not just give an article like do not give an attributive like CCP to it, right? Just China. Well, I respect that. So objectively speaking, China is on an even term with America right now, right? Well, I'm not 100% agreeing this point, but I can see the point in this, right? Because America has finally learned how to respect China, the other power from the other end of the world. Anyway, the thing is, what does it mean to the Asian community here in America? Because, especially in the COVID times, well, and that time I was still in China. I was scared as fuck for the Chinese control, for the CCP's control of my own personal freedom. I was not allowed to travel outside. I was not allowed. They threatened me to say, oh, if you do this, if you do that, we will block you from traveling, to work forever, things like that. They're just threatening us to say, oh, you guys have to wake up at 1 a.m. in the morning. You guys have to do the kind of testing of the virus. I can see like 95-year-old old lady, old granny walking like in a humped back, walking like very, very painfully, So I feel like pretty empathetic about that. That's why one of the many reasons why I hate one-party system, why I hate CCP China, despite CCP China might really bring up about the Chinese international status and improve the economy a little bit. But I do believe that even without CCP, Chinese people can fight on their own, and China can be even greater without CCP. That's my reasonable guess. Okay, anyway, the thing is that now, in the COVID years, right, you guys know that some Asians in the street, they got just beat up, especially, that's funny that how they picked up the victim, For me, young, buffed Asian dudes, look how huge my muscle is. And I know the, mixed martial art, I always win, in a boxing gym, right? So even against many of our Western counterparts, I'm not talking about a professional boxer, right? There's no match, but between the amateurs, I kind of always win. I kind of have a quicker reflex. I'm strong enough, this and that. But they're not picking a fight on me, right? But they're picking a fight on some Asian old lady and Asian old uncle, something like that. Many people start blaming to say, oh, that's because the Asian uncle look at me in an evil way. He's trying to, chew me alive because he's just a, rat eater. He's a rabbit eater. He's just spitter, because we come across some situation, some Chinese old guy, who's like that. Well, I do apologize to you guys, right? On behalf of my countrymen, or maybe they're not my countrymen, right? But on behalf of my own blood, even though Eastern Asian, we have a lot of genetic variety, even the variety is greater maybe than Caucasians. I don't know, we look the same, but we're quite different genetically, Not everybody have the slanted eye look, right? My eyes is not that slanted, maybe slightly slanted, but not that slanted. And I don't have a very, very small nose either, so it's different. But anyway, that guy spit in the middle of the road. You guys feel disgusting, right? You feel, oh, they don't speak English. There's like, some racial discrimination stuff against them. I don't understand where that come from. There's psychological warfare, like the World War II, Japanese is being sent to the concentration camp in fear that they might become the spy of Empire Japan. That's pretty bad story. That's a bad history. Even the government had apologized for that. But I kind of understand where that kind of sentiment came from, right? So in the COVID years, the old guys of Asia and old ladies of Asia got punched in the street. It's just like, it's pretty, it's pretty wild. It's pretty unreasonably did, and it's pretty uncivilized, right? I kind of understand that. But I also hate the idea that Asians always become the victims, because a lot of times Asians were the aggressor. And I see some news nowadays to say, oh, Asians are the robbers, Asians are the guy who started first and they win the fight, this and that. I'm not particularly proud of that shit. I discourage violence in any form. Violence is violence. Violence is not great. It's not good. Unless the other party started violence first, you have to use violence righteously, defend your own right. And that's another story, because we're talking about legal self-defense, right? But if you start to do the violence thing to other people, that's pretty bad, right? I'm not trying to incite that kind of stuff, but it's also glad for me to see that Asians finally fight back. Because a lot of situations, Asians are not a first aggressor, but they fight back in a fierce way, and aggressor back down like crazy, They think themselves a wolf warrior, just like a CCP wolf warrior, and they back down like wolf rabbits, like wolf rats, something like that, okay? Anyway, so I feel like now, I can see the difference, because many people see me as Chinese. Well, no offense, I love America, of course. I kind of love America more than CCP China. Don't get me wrong, I love China because that's where I come from. I'm proud of my Chinese blood though, but I am against CCP for the region, for the political structure only, okay? But anyway, many people began to smile at me to say, wow, you're Chinese. I love your surname. Wow, you're like Yao Kun Li. How'd you pronounce your name? Yao Kun? Wow, that's great. Believe me, many people are not speaking like a sarcastic tone, because I can see the difference between microaggression and the real respect. Many people say my name in a real respectful way. I can say that. But there are some racial discriminants, some racists. Of course, racist was everywhere, not just in America. You think in CCP China we don't have racists? There are a lot of people who are against the foreigners there. There are xenophobic people. They are more racist than ever, believe me. Asians are not always a victim. A lot of times Asians were aggressors, but because the news did not report that. I don't know why. Maybe because Asian newspaper just want to make make the world know that we're humble, we're respectful, so we do not want to expose that kind of manner. I can't understand like Western media, why the Western media say it like that way, because Western media does not want to portray Asians as strong people. I kind of understand it. This is not a conspiracy stuff, but I also do understand why Asian media would not expose Asians as aggressors. Anyway, kind of crap. Respect everybody, no violence here, okay? Fuck up the violence in my zone here. Anyway, America gave me new life. I love America. Everybody's peaceful, everybody's equal. We're created equal under God, even though I'm not a Christian yet, but I believe that. Anyway, so I feel like Asians' social status is becoming a little bit higher nowadays, because finally white people, black people are seeing Asians like more evenly. I'm not saying that Asians were not at the evil level. I'm sorry, even level, right? Not an evil level. Excuse my language, right? But now I feel like they really began to objectively view Asians as equal, or maybe, in some aspect, for example, AI race, or some kind of boxing, even better. No offense, guys, right? I'm just talking about this kind of phenomenon here. Many people begin to notice that, oh, Asian guy cool, Asian guy, now we have black myth Wukong, even though that's made by the CCP China, right? But that's a cool product, anyway, right? So I would feel like Asian social status has been improved a little bit, really, due to the rise of China. I'm not talking about the rise of CCP, because I hate CCP. I don't want to run away from it, because I'm opening against their system. I'm so fearful of ever return to China. I may get prosecuted, highly likely. Or they sentence me 5 years in prison, but God knows, right? I may not survive the 5 years in prison, and they keep poisoning my food. I will get lung cancer, I will get liver cancer, this and that. Maybe even for not getting cancer, at least I will start from malnutrition. You know, my bones will become brittle, and I cannot resist their, harassment. I cannot resist their, the kind of enslavement. And I will become a slave of CCP. I mean, literally. Yeah, many people died prematurely before their prison terms ended. They sentence you like 5 years in prison, but you might die in prison. So the 5 year in prison become a lifetime sentence. Anyway, but guys, be aware that for Asian people, we still have to fight for our dignity. We still have to fight for our social status in an equal way, right? I'm not trying to do I'm not trying to overturn the bad situation to say that, oh, Asians is the best, we have to disregard white people, black people, we have to, enslave them, we have to exploit them, we have to, no. I'm talking about a mutual respectful way. I come across a lot of white friends of mine, many people, they respect me, I respect them, back. Like, we have a lot of kind people, a lot of so kind. The kindness I never witnessed in China, though. So I'm talking about Asian people rise up in a respectful way. I do not want Asian people to become the bullies, right? Get rid of the so-called victim mentality, this and that, does not mean that you have to become a bully, right? Because Asian, we're talking about socially, we have the Jensen Huang, he's a CEO of NVIDIA. How high is that, right? So like Asian people can really climb the social ladder very high in North America. So there's no discrimination. There's no system discrimination. Guys, don't be exaggerated to say, oh, they treat me unfairly. No, stop the crap. I mean, just get out of that victim mentality, period. Just make friends with everybody. Do not isolate yourself to have the Asian community only. Salute, respect to my own people, respect to Asian community. Though, however, do not always live in Chinatown for all your life and never make friends with anybody else. Get out of that zone. Be brave, be explorative, be exploring, more adventurous. That's how a true American should behave like. The world is huge, right? Respect everybody and be respected. If somebody disrespect you, you can disrespect him back. Of course, in legal, right? I'm not talking about illegally, right? Behave well, have balls, have dignity, okay? But I respect everybody's political choice, right? But for me personally, I hate CCP still. Even though Xi Jinping is very powerful, even though CCP rise to the edge, right? Even though CCP is really getting ahead right now, but as long as Chinese people are not liberated, as long as that we cannot speak freely about a mayor, not to even mention Xi Jinping, you cannot even speak freely about a mayor in the Chinese internet. You cannot do the free demonstration because every demonstration have to be granted by the CCP censorship and scrutiny, right? And every demonstration have to be approved prior to the demonstration day. That's crazy. Okay. As long as Chinese people still do not have civil rights, I will never love CCP. If CCP really, really become democratized, I would have more respect for it, but not now. Okay? Okay, ciao. That's pretty much what I can say for today, and see you next time. Bye-bye.